Hello, everyone. Today I'm joined by twins Yash and Kabir Bajaj, who are at two of the world's top business schools, Wharton and Columbia. Yash and Kabir followed the same academic path till college, graduating with the same engineering degree at the University of Michigan, Ann Arbor, before diverging into different professional journeys. Today, we will go beyond rankings to understand what the MBA experience actually looks like, from classrooms and culture to recruiting, ROI, and personal transformation. So, welcome, Yash and Kabir. Lovely to reconnect with you.
Likewise, it's great reconnecting.
Yeah, thank you for having us.
Yeah. Would you like to start by introducing yourselves?
Sure, I can go first. So my name is Yash Bajaj. I just finished my first year MBA at Wharton. I'm studying finance and entrepreneurship there, and now I'm going to be doing an investment banking summer internship at Modus.
Hi, I'm Kabir. I just finished my first year at Columbia Business School, and I did consulting prior to the MBA. During the MBA, I focused on finance, and through the summer, I'm working at a travel tech startup called Optivoid.ai.
Perfect. Lovely to have you with me today. You were two of my favorite candidates, if I may say so. Even though I didn't really work extensively with Yash as I did with Kabir. All right, let's start with academics and classroom experience, and let's keep it simple. Give me one sentence or one phrase to answer each of the questions that I'm asking you. Uh, and anyone can go first. How would you like to describe your classroom experience?
Sure, I'll go first. So I think one word to describe my classroom experience would be dynamic. I think not only do you get to learn so much from the professors and the content that he's teaching, everyone in the class has their own previous work experience, their own perspectives, and I think that adds a lot in terms of the discussions we have, and every conversation I have seems like I learned something new.
Right, Kabir?
Yeah. Yeah, I think very similar for me, but it's also very engaging. I think most classes at CBS, if they're not case-based, and people end up speaking from their past experiences and bring up learnings from their past jobs, and because so many people come from different backgrounds, it ends up giving you very different perspectives on some of the topics that are being discussed. So I think it's really engaging and makes you challenge what you already think.
All right, so wide range of perspectives is what I'm hearing. What surprised you most about the academic rigor at your respective schools?
I can go first for this one. I think CBS is super applied, and that's also partly because of the access we get to the New York City alumni. A lot of people, a lot of professors bring a lot of professors bring really large faculty members to classes, and also people who are um, profound in the space. And so you end up having exposure to these people who have been in the industry for really long and can share their valuable experiences. So I think it's more applied in that sense.
Right.
So I can go next. At Wharton, and this is maybe to speak to about many other schools also. We follow a very strong case method, and a lot of our classes have cases every single day. And because there's a diverse student body in each of these classes, each case can go in 10 different ways based on what a person brings up, and so you always have to be prepared. You can't come into the class just to go and watch the discussion. You actually have to be intentional in your approach to actually be involved in the discussion. I think that's what makes it pretty challenging.
Right. So I'm hearing a lot of cases at both schools.
Yeah.
How different is learning inside the classroom versus what you expected pre-MBA?
Sure, I can go first for this one. And so doing my undergrad in the US at the University of Michigan, I thought the MBA is just going to be an extension of that, maybe slightly tougher frameworks, more concepts to learn, but it's actually very different. A lot of your learning is based on the people around you, as I mentioned earlier, and it's a lot more discussion heavy than an engineering class I took in undergrad. And I think that's something that I was a little shocked to see. But at the same time, I think that approach is significantly better because you actually get to interact and make friends in class through those discussions.
Yeah, I think I would say two words, more focused and interactive. Um, I knew coming into the MBA at Columbia has bigger class size, about 1,000 per year. But when you take your electives, there's much lesser people in each class. I think on average, I have about 30 to 40 people a class. And so you get more individual feedback from the professor and you get to interact more with them on a daily basis.
Right. So, the large class size, none of you have mentioned, being in a large class. That doesn't seem to have hampered your, learning in any way. All right. One class that genuinely changed how you think.
I think for me, it's value investing, and CBS is very well known for the value investing program. It gives you access to industry experts. You simulate a situation where you have a professor who is your fund manager and you end up being the analyst and report to him on a daily basis. So I think that class taught me a lot about investing.
All right.
Yeah, I can go next on a very similar note. I think one class that taught me a lot was the valuations class at Wharton. And I think this class allowed me to gain significant exposure into how you evaluate and pitch stocks to different people. And this was a class I worked in a team, and I learned how to actually analyze a stock, look at the fundamentals. And based on that, we were able to come up with a recommendation, and we were able to pitch that to the professor and the rest of the class. And I think that was something that I was really excited for, coming in with a background in finance.
Yeah, I gather value investing is right up your alley because if I remember correctly, Kabir, even while you were in college, you were investing and you grew your portfolio to was it $100,000? I'm not sure. Yeah, by the time you were 21, you had a fairly large portfolio for yourself. So I guess
Yeah,
it's value.
yeah, I've been very passionate about investing since undergrad, and I think that's partly one of the reasons why I'm very happy that Columbia worked out for me. It's one of the schools that's better known for finance.
Perfect. Great fit for you. All right. If both of you had to take one class from each other's school, what would it be and why?
I would take Wharton's entrepreneurship classes, more specifically one called Entrepreneurship, where they help you go through the entire ideation process from 0 to 1, thinking about product, then deciding about product market fit, fundraising, going through financials, coming to a break even, quantity, etc. And then a follow-up class to that called Entrepreneurship Launchpad, where they actually give you the resources to go on and build that company that you first thought of. I think CBS isn't as broadly known for entrepreneurship because the students don't really want to get into it, and the resources probably aren't as good as in a school like Wharton.
Mm-hmm. Yash?
Yeah, I can go next. So I think one class that I'm extremely interested in CBS is the applied security analysis class. And so this is, using you choose one stock to research through the entire semester, and then you have to pitch that stock to world famous investors. Like my brother pitched to Bill Ackman about a month ago. And I think that's something that was really cool. I think you know how they leverage the New York City network and alumni that they have to bring these world leaders to class is something that Wharton slightly lacks on, just because they aren't in New York City. And I think that's something that I wish I had the opportunity to do at Wharton.
Yeah, clearly, you guys talk to each other. And and yes, I mean, Kabir, I agree with you. Wharton is also known for entrepreneurship, although most people call it the finance school, but it has a fantastic entrepreneurship and healthcare program. And of course, Columbia has tremendous access, which very few other schools can boast of. All right, let's move on to the culture and the location edge that each of your school has, beyond academics, culture is where the schools really differentiate. Now, if you had to describe the average Wharton or Columbia Business School student, what traits would you highlight and define the community there?
Sure, I can start with this one. So I think just like coming into the school, you know that you're going to be surrounded with ambitious people. There's not many people who slack off in the semester. Everyone is someone who has succeeded in their life prior to Wharton, and so I think that's one of the strongest traits. apart from that, everyone is extremely intentional about what they want to do at school. Just because there's so many things happening, you need to come in with a very strong mindset about what you wanna pursue in the school and what activities you want to do. And then lastly, everyone's extremely collaborative. Like while you're recruiting, when you're in classes, everyone's so willing to help you and help you connect with some of their network. And I think that's one of the strongest resources that you can get at Wharton.
So intentional and collaborative is what I hear.
Yeah.
Kabir?
Yeah, I think it's very similar for CBS. Um, I think if I had to say one word, it would probably be the commentators like initiative. Even though CBS has a location advantage in New York, CBS is just the door. You have to actually go through the door and take advantage of those opportunities. So I think people are curious and self-directed. People come from their different backgrounds, but want to take advantage of the ability to meet people across investing, startups, consulting, product management, and even through the J term, you end up meeting a lot of people from the family business background. So I think all those in general give you wide access to different people, but you need to have initiative to actually go and meet those people and not stay in the CBS bubble.
Right. So initiative and access is what I hear for CBS. All right, let's talk about Wharton. There's a perception of a high intensity social scene. How do you find your niche among 800 plus students?
Yeah, so I think Wharton can seem very big at first. When you go in, you can be overwhelmed with, 800 people in the first year, 800 people in the second year. There's always something happening. There's clubs that do everything from like golf to drinking beer to, the more academic clubs like investment management or finance. And this can seem very overwhelming, but I think as you like sort of find your feet there, you find the people that you like the most, the people that you share the most in common with, and based on this, you can sort of try to tailor what your experience looks like by deciding where you want to go out, where you don't want to go out. I think the most important thing here is to learn how to say no. Like if you want a night at home, you have to, tell the person no and just stay at home and not go out that day.
Okay, so not get overwhelmed by saying no. All right,
Yeah.
Kabir.
Yeah, I
Okay.
think very
No, I have a different question for you. Now, CBS often gets a reputation for being commuter heavy because of New York City. How do you build a tight-knit community when the city is your playground? You have so much access, there is an opportunity to go out there and do whatever you want. You have a very large class, but how do you build a tight-knit community?
Yeah, so I think very similar to Wharton, we have about 800 people in the fall term and about 150 or 200 people in the J term. So each class is about 1,000 people. A lot of people are scattered across the west side of Manhattan, but at the end of the day, we all end up at the Manhattanville campus from Monday to Thursday every week, and we aren't part of the rest of the Columbia campus. So you end up seeing familiar faces almost every single day. And I think if you're looking at building relationships with alumni, it's been the case where if you reach out to someone on LinkedIn, they often call you to their office even for a really short coffee chat. And so you're able to build those relationships even outside school. So I haven't had the experience of going to small school, went to a pretty big school for undergrad as well. So I think for me, it's not been such a big challenge forming that community because you end up seeing them so often.
All right, great. So despite them being very large classes, you have the opportunity to build community. Uh, okay, now tell me, both of you are twins. As I said, you almost followed identical paths till you graduated. How did you two ensure that you weren't just following each other? And how did you identify which school was the right fit one for you?
Sure, I can go for this one first. I think the twin part of the application was really important in the sense that a lot of our identity is based on being a twin. At the same time, because MBA admissions officers value diversity, I had to lean into some of the different experiences that I had growing up. And I think our paths mainly diverged after our undergraduate studies at the University of Michigan. And so, I leaned on the experiences in my workplace, tried to sort of differentiate myself using primarily those experiences and try to cater those to Wharton as much as possible. and I chose Wharton mainly because I was really interested in finance. I wanted to go to a top school where I would get a very strong collaborative network to rely on after graduation. I think that's just what picked Wharton first for me.
All right. What about you, Kabir?
Yeah, same. So I think for me, CBS was very important because one, I knew my long-term goals are not going to be in the US. I wanted to be back at home in India. So having a more international class was very important to me. CBS has 50% international, 50% US versus some of the different other M7 schools. I think it's on the more diverse side. So I think that and the ability to have a really good view into finance through the value investing program. Other classes that CBS specializes in by bringing really profound world leaders to class made me choose CBS over any other school.
I could only see you at CBS. I really couldn't see you anywhere else, Kabir. And yeah, and Wharton is as good a finance school as CBS. All right. So, okay, I want you to complete this sentence for me. You will hate my school if you are someone who.
I
Okay.
can go first with this one. I think for me, you'd probably hate CBS if you live in a bubble. We don't have a gated campus. We have two large buildings right at the edge of Manhattan. I think a lot of the advantage the school gives you is through the network that you build outside of the school and through the coffee chats you can have in New York with like a really short subway train. So I would say that if you want to live in a bubble, you want a gated campus and you want a small class size, CBS probably isn't for you.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Yash?
For me, it's if you want a small, very handheld and curated experience in your MBA, I think Wharton's not the school for you. If you can't deal with FOMO, if you can't deal with, very ambitious people around you, I don't think Wharton's the right school.
Oh, wow. Okay. All right. Tell me, each one of you, tell me one stereotype about your school that is completely wrong.
I can go first. So I think Wharton is known to be a very finance heavy and overly competitive school, but that's not the case. I think that's partially true, but now Wharton has many other majors. It's the first school to offer the AI for business program in the MBA. And I think now they're catered to a variety of different majors and allow you to choose your own path. And in terms of the overly competitiveness, I think most M7 schools have the grade non-disclosure the great non-disclosure policy, and I think that allows you to collaborate a lot with the people around you, and I think that lends to a very collaborative environment rather than a competitive one.
Oh, nice to hear. I'm going to circle back to the AI for business in a minute, but let's hear Kabir first.
Yeah, I think one stereotype is also that CBS is a school that's only good for finance. I think it is definitely a school that's good for finance, but because of the access to New York, even though recruiting in other fields is not as structured, you have the ability to recruit into those fields. I have friends who are going into tech because many large tech companies have their offices in New York, startups. I'm going into a startup, for example, and even other non-traditional recruiting pathways. So I think a lot of people have the idea that CBS is just a finance school, which I don't think is very accurate.
I would agree with you. I mean, it's New York is actually a huge place for tech, not much as people would like to believe that that is concentrated in the Bay Area. It is a huge place for tech, also uh, ESG and some other fields. But Yash, I want to circle back to AI for MBA. Can you AI for business? Can you talk a little about that?
Yeah, so this is a major that's trying to integrate the new AI world into MBAs, and it basically teaches you how to keep up with AI, the different aspects in terms of the legal aspects, the ethical aspects of AI. Personally, I haven't done any course in the program, but I do think it's extremely interesting for someone who wants to get into technology or wants to just keep up with how fast AI is moving. And also, the Wharton School allows you to do one semester in San Francisco, and this lends to that whole AI program where you actually get to be in Silicon Valley and be around all these different startups in this new age of tech.
Oh, wow. Interesting. Thank you for that information. That's new even for me. All right. Oh, outside of classes, tell me what are your weekends like at Columbia Business School and Wharton? Kabir.
Yeah, I think weekends are generally very social, except for the first semester. The first semester, a lot of people are doing structured recruiting in investment banking and consulting for the summer internship. So anyone recruiting for those pretty much spends their weekends entirely focusing on recruiting prep. From the second semester onwards, it's totally up to you. There's people who have very different interests, people who are into sport, people who want to have a very social scene, people who like music. And New York gives you the ability to do anything you want. For
What do you
example,
do?
oh, I end up taking the mornings a little chill. I watch sport. I'm a huge soccer fan, so I end up watching the games. Then I probably would catch up on some homework or any deliverables that are due for school. And then in the night I would have a more social plan with some of my friends.
All right. I hope you have tickets to some of the matches to the World Cup happening in the US this year. Yash.
Yeah, so I think very similar to Kabir, but I think I want to mention one thing is that a lot of the times on the weekends you'll be traveling. In the first semester, I was recruiting for investment banking, and so I think I spent maybe 10 out of the 15 weekends in the US in New York, and I had Kabir there, so I was able to stay there. And then apart from that, if you're actually in Philadelphia, you there's plans all the time with other students. You wake up, there'll be people going for coffee. Sometimes, so I sometimes go to that. Otherwise, you spend some time at home, complete your work on assignments. You try to do the things that you can't otherwise do in the week. You go to the gym, or you play a sport, you go out, meet friends. And in the night there's always a plan to either go out to a bar or to just hang out with friends, play board games, something like that you're interested in.
So it's not all work. There is enough play to go with it. All right.
Yeah.
Both of you spoke of recruitment and, probably, it's something that everybody cares about, but few understand. So we are going to talk about recruiting and career reality now. Um, let's talk about, and you've both spoken about how, in the first semester, both of you were very focused on recruiting, as is the rest of your class. So tell me, what is the most stressful part about recruiting that nobody talks about?
I think the most stressful part for me was as soon as you come into the MBA on day one, you need to sort of decide what you want to recruit for. So whether it's consulting or IB, these are the two most dominant structured pathways at CBS, and you have to go. You reach college on at the end of August, and by September 3rd or 4th, you have to let the college know what you're recruiting for. So you only have a week to speak to as many people as you can to make that decision. So I think that was a very stressful, like immediate experience for me at CBS.
Got it. Yash?
Yeah, I think for me, like, yeah, everything that Kabir said, so recruiting starts early. But apart from that, I think there's a lot of noise around recruiting. Everyone is doing some kind of recruiting, and so a lot of the timelines don't match. So if you're recruiting for consulting or banking, you're recruiting early, and then for recruiting for like private equity or venture capital, like that starts much later. And so you oftentimes see your peers like just recruiting, and that puts a lot of stress on you because you might not be having interviews because your interviews come later. And apart from that, I think there's just last year there was a lot of noise around like the whole immigration policy for international students, and the whole like changes to H-1B and stuff like that. I think that's what was also stressful for some of my other peers who really want to stay in the US post graduation.
So what I'm hearing is that the noise and the stress around you adds to your stress levels. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, I think last year especially though that there were at least in banking and consulting there were firms that pulled out a sponsorship while we were recruiting. So it was like very dynamic. We didn't really know which banks were sponsoring. You don't know if you show up to a coffee chat whether you're gonna have the next one. So that also added to the stress for sure.
Part of the uncertainty, in the general environment, whether it is geopolitics or economics. All right. So, but I believe both of you already have internships lined up for this summer. Tell me, when did you start preparing for it, and how did career services support you?
I can go first for this. As Kabir mentioned earlier, prep starts as soon as you get on campus, maybe even before you actually come, you need to start working on your resume. You need to start working on trying to find out what you want to do in the summer of between your first year and your second year. But I think the most important thing is to take initiative to reach out to career services. They help you with everything from, creating your resume, to interview support, to actually like reaching out to the right people. And they also help by bringing all these firms to campus at a specific time. And so I think that they really handhold you through the entire recruiting process, and they help you narrow down which companies to apply to.
All right. So
Yeah,
intense involvement.
Yeah.
Yes.
yeah, I think Yash spoke really well about the two structured pathways at CBS. So it's very similar for investment banking and consulting. And then in addition, CBS has this platform which is very similar to Handshake for those who have done undergrad in the US, where they have a full repository of companies looking to fill roles that come to CBS specifically. So that's not open to anyone else. So
Oh,
you get to apply to those roles before anyone else does. And then secondly, they bring all these companies to school during lunch and the evening break. So you get access to them directly in that sense as well. For me, I did startup recruiting, which started midway through the spring semester, which is from Jan to May. And I think so that's much later than investment banking and consulting. So I had to wait through the first half of the year and then only start actually getting very active in recruiting through the second half.
yeah. I'm hearing a lot of schools talk about, business schools talk about these micro events that they have, things that you spoke about, like having them over during lunch or, post classes, when you have smaller groups and, companies come and talk to them, to people who are, their target group kind of thing. And that's kind of the way recruiting is going. Uh, right. Tell me, and both of you have spoken about networking, which is, of course, an important part of the MBA experience. Now, it's central to the B school experience. So tell me what, at both at Wharton and at CBS, how much of it is facilitated by the school and how much of it is self-driven?
I think it's an equal share of both for me. So in terms of networking, I think, the school definitely brings in some of the biggest names. I know like 3 weeks into my journey at Wharton, we were on a Zoom call with Mark Cuban. And so that was something that I didn't expect. But then at the same time, when you're recruiting or you want to reach out to a specific person, I think you have to actually take that initiative. Even if you're like in a country like India and you want to like reach out to someone, you can use that Wharton brand name to speak to alumni or not, or even other people if you want to speak to VCs. And I think that really lends credibility to you and gives you that first step in the door when you want to reach out to these kind of people.
All right. Kabir?
Yeah, at CBS for investment banking and consulting, CBS gives you a guaranteed coffee chat with all the banks. For international students, it's all the banks that sponsor. For the non-structured pathways like tech, consulting, etc., you either go through student clubs or you reach out to people on LinkedIn. So that's more self-directed. So for the two structured pathways, it's like 100% coffee chats are from school. But for the non-structured pathways, it's all through your initiative.
I'm learning a few things about CBS I didn't know. Thank you. All right. I mean, I didn't know that they had, specific recruiting for people who had done undergrad in the US. And that's interesting. That's something that I didn't know. All right. Now let's move on to the application strategy and position. So let's rewind to before you got it. As twins, did you intentionally try to differentiate your stories in your essays, or did you lean on your shared identity?
Um, I'll go first because I applied in round one. So at the time, Yash hadn't really started applying to schools. So I pretty much came up with the best narrative with the red pen that fit how I could best portray myself to show intentionality into what I wanted to do and what portrays me in the best way to show how I'm different from other candidates. And I think that worked for me. And
Right.
I'll let Yash speak to how he may have differentiated.
And so since Yash applied in round two, he had to work around that. You had that advantage.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I can go next. So, yeah, as Kabir mentioned, I applied at round two, and I think what my strategy was to basically portray the most authentic form of myself, and I think that meant that, being a twin, I had to sort of show that part of my identity, and at the same time, I had to differentiate myself just because Kabir was also applying to Wharton and some other schools in round two, and so to keep the application different. But I didn't leave out certain parts of my experience just because I was a twin, or I didn't mention some things just to sort of exemplify the differences between me and Kabir. But yeah, I think everyone has their own individual journey before school, and I think that's what I tried to stress more on.
Great. Okay, tell me, what is the one mistake that applicants consistently make?
I
And
think I think applicants focus more on what the admissions officer of the school really wants to hear and how they best fit the school. So they tailor what their past experiences to really show how they fit with the school's values. I think that probably doesn't work in their favor just because then they hide some aspects that would probably differentiate them from other candidates. So I think being authentic is really what people sometimes struggle with in their
how
application.
many times do we tell you to tell your story and not what the schools want to hear? Yash.
Yeah, I think one thing that I think applicants make a mistake with is, just targeting the big brand name schools in the US. And I think this sounds a little hypocritical coming from someone who goes to Wharton. I think it's extremely important to visit these campuses, or at least try to get a feel about, what it's like, what the values are, just because, you might find a better fit at a school that might not be, one of the M7s, for example. You might want to go to a school that's in a smaller city, or a school that has a specific program. And I think that's something that you should focus on, just because, your experience is so dependent on what kind of culture the school promotes, what kind of programs there are, what kind of people are around you. And so it's very important to find the right fit.
I couldn't agree more with you. I mean, most business schools have tremendous breadth and depth, and it's not necessary that just the M7 is a good fit for you. You can find a lot of schools that might be able to give you what you need to reach your goals. All right. Um, if you were to reapply, what would you do differently today?
I can go first with this. So since I started applying in round two, I wanted to apply to more schools than an average person would, and so I decided to apply to, I think, 6 or 7 schools, just to be on the safer side of things. I think the one change I would make would be to apply to fewer schools, try to, spend my time more on the applications that I was submitting. And at the same time, I think one thing that I would change was my focus and my stress regarding the GMAT. I know that this is a very important component of the application, but at the same time, I think it's just one part of it, and a lot of it is dependent on, the rest of your profile, your recommendation letters, the kind of experiences you've had before. And I think one thing that everyone should do is, treat your application as a whole, and try to present the best version of you in that sense.
Thank you for saying that, Kabir.
Yeah, I think for me is I think you know this better than anyone else. I really struggled to create a coherent essay. I had no intent. Like the application for CBS, for example, asks you what do you want from CBS, how do you co-create your experience, and I was just pulling ideas out of like thin air and adding them in any order. Didn't really show what I really wanted to do at CBS. So I think for me, what I would change is speak to many different people who are in the dream roles that I would want to be at after the MBA, and then sort of understand what they did at CBS and follow a very similar path in the essays to show that I've researched the school knows that I know what I'm getting into and how I'd be a good fit for the school.
Absolutely. You know how much we focus on research, and well, sometimes candidates don't have enough time to do that. I understand that they are working, they have, a lot of commitments, outside of work as well. But there is really no substitute for research, if you really want a strong application. put through a strong application and also understand the school that you want to apply to. Right. I want to talk a little about the red pen and ask you what was the most strategic intervention by the red pen in your application journey?
Yeah, I think for me, what was most important, I think, was the red pen gives you a form very early on where you just like vomit everything you know about yourself onto a paper. And it doesn't have to be in any flow. You just go into as much detail as possible. And to me, when I first went through the form, it was super extensive. I didn't know why the red pen was asking for so many details. But the moment I had my first call with you, I think I realized that all of these can really play into how you can build a really strong essay. So for me, everything from what my family does to what my interests are really played a role into what I wanted to do after the MBA, which was to create a fintech that helped um, financing people in India more. They wanted to make financing people in India more accessible. So I think somehow I would have never thought of that narrative to put myself forward in, but I think the Red Pen was able to do that. And I think that form played a really crucial role in helping me do that.
Connecting the dots, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can go next. So I think it's very difficult to choose just one instance where the red pen was the most helpful. But I think one thing that, I got slightly caught up in was looking at Kabir's application and getting biased by it. But I think Shreya, who was my consultant at the red pen, did a very good job to try to, keep me on my own path, try to make my application just about me and trying to showcase um, my entire personality and strengths through the application process. And so I think that's something um that was very difficult for me, just looking at all of Kabir's round one applications. And I think the second thing that the Red Pen does really well is they help you through the entire process. So, um, whether it's your essays or just deciding what your school list is, or just how to reach out to your recommenders from either your workplace or your college to just come up with the recommendation letters. I think that's really valuable and difficult to do if you don't have the correct guidance.
So comprehensive support. I always like this part of the conversation. Okay, if you were to describe in one word your experience of working with us, what would that be?
I think for me it would be perfection. I think I went so Columbia was the first school I applied to, and each of the three essays probably went through 10 to 12 drafts. So I was like turning 36 essays in a span of a month. And I realized that you probably had other candidates to work with. So I can't even imagine how much work goes into each candidate. So I think that would be the one word I had to say.
Thank you. Yash.
Yeah, I think for me, difficult to choose one word, but I would say accommodating because I did my applications in the US. And so a lot of times, my calls were like very late in the night. I remember before my NYU Stern application, I think I was working with Shreya till like 2 a.m. the day before the deadline. Just because I wanted to perfect one part of the application that we thought was slightly of a that needed slight improvements. And I think just the kind of work that the entire Red Pen team put into my application, the hours that they committed to me was just something that I think they went over the board for just to make sure that my application was in like the right space and was the best possible for the deadline.
This is my high. This is the point at which I should ideally, close the conversation, but I have, a few more questions to ask you. Okay, let's move on to ROI and certain financial considerations. Tell me, how expensive is it living in Philly, Yash?
It's definitely expensive. You're going to be paying rent, you're going to be paying for your living expenses and the MBA. And one thing I think I really want to mention here is that the MBA does come with some true hidden costs. Things that you don't expect. If you want to do a trip that mostly everyone will be doing, um, it's pretty expensive. You'll be paying upwards of $2,000 or $3,000 for each trip. And it's something that people often forget to, take into consideration when they come for the MBA. But yeah, I think compared to New York, it is cheaper, but it's definitely more expensive when you compare it to staying in the US just because of the currency rate right now.
Yeah, you've already covered my next question where I was going to ask you about the hidden costs. But yeah, I think, a lot of these events that you attend or the trips that you take cost a lot of money, and most people don't factor that in. Kabir, I mean, New York is expensive, period.
Yeah, I think college tells you to shell out $40,000 a year, which is a year for them is 8 months of living. So they tell you to keep that much aside, which includes rent and living for that period of time. But I think some hidden expenses that they don't really talk about are every social plan comes with like a cost. Nothing in New York is cheap, so you end up even for a small dinner, you end up paying $50, and then you end up doing so many of those just because you want to make the most of the experience with your friends here. And I think the second biggest thing is the other trips. I went to a pretty big trip recently to Colombia. The trek itself costs about 2,500 excluding flights. And then once you go there, of course, you have to spend on your food and all of that stuff. So I think in total, that trip probably came out to be 4.5 to $5,000. And then you end up doing about 2 to 3 of these each year.
So you need to factor that in. And also, as Yash said, remember the power of no. You shouldn't be doing everything that you would ideally want to. Okay, how do you personally define return on investment now that you're inside the program?
Yeah, so I think the ROI it's definitely different for everyone. I think there's some things that before you go, you need to decide you want to get out of the MBA. So I think those things for me were firstly, develop a very strong network. I think that's the most valuable sort of return on investment that you get from going to one of these top schools. The second thing is, you learn a lot from these. You get exposure to world-class leaders, world-class professors. I think that's something that's an invaluable resource, difficult to get anywhere else. And lastly, this is something that's the most direct, but getting a job after your MBA, I think that can be one of the most important things for a few people. But just because of how the immigration policies are going, how the market is going, I think it's extremely difficult to get a job out of college now. And this applies to every school. I think you need to make sure that that's not the only reason that you're coming to the MBA.
Absolutely right. I always say that you need to look at, your MBA outside of the job prospects. Would you still be doing it if your job prospects didn't exist in that particular geography? Kabir.
Yeah, I think very similar answer to Yash. I think for me, ROI was less about a job outcome, but more of what my opportunities would be outside of the MBA once I graduate. So I think like an example of this is more recently, I was able to pitch a stock to Bill Ackman and that's not something I would do even if I was working at a fund post the MBA. So I think that experience is something that I value a lot in terms of the ROI. Secondly, another experience, for example, is we get a fixed table to CBS students at the Berkshire Hathaway annual conference. I didn't go to that one, but again, like that's an experience that you wouldn't otherwise get. So I think in general, um, for me, it was less about the job, more about like how this affects my decisions going forward after the MBA, how much I can learn today. And so I feel like for me, total compensation after the MBA didn't really matter in terms of ROI.
So the long-term, returns on your MBA is important. I'm going to quickly talk about your personal growth and transformation. Can each one of you tell me, how has your experience at business school transformed you?
I think for me, so the first semester was mainly core classes stuff you've already learned, so I don't think that really changes much. But I think overall it's made me make have stronger conviction in some of my ideas and gain an understanding of how you can sort of learn from these diverse perspectives. So it teaches you these principles in leadership that you wouldn't otherwise know unless you actually were a leader at a firm or actually try to focus on these aspects of learning through other methods. So I think that's probably what I've gotten through the MBA so far. And I think what I plan to get from the next 1 year is to actually understand I want to start a business of my own after the MBA, and that's probably what I'm going to focus on next.
Yash?
I think I missed the first part of the question, but in terms of transformation, I think
Personal growth and transformation at
okay.
business.
Yeah, so I think what the MBAs taught me is to have a very open, perspective on all the conversations I have. It's very important to realize that a lot of the people that you meet come from different backgrounds and have different experiences, and so you need to be open to learning. I feel like every conversation, whether it's in a classroom, whether it's in the corridor, there's just something new to learn from it. And I think that's one sort of, transformation that I've felt over the last 1 year. In terms of going forward, yeah, I think one thing that I want to do next year is try to work on my entrepreneurship journey as well. Similar to Kabir, I want to come back to India after graduation. So um, I want to like try to find new co-founders, try to look for or study more in depth the entrepreneurship idea that I want to pursue. And I think that's something that I'll be looking forward to doing next year.
Right. Okay, tell me one thing that the other person has done better in this journey. Kabir, what has Yash done better in this journey than you have?
I think Yash probably gets better access to the scale of the platform of Wharton. Wharton has a stronger alumni depth across almost every career path. So all of the learnings you get are probably like multi-dimensional in terms of you get learnings from sort of better professors in different fields. I think that's something maybe Yash has access to that someone at CBS doesn't have as good of an option with. So I think that breadth creates a lot more flexibility and room to experiment in school.
All right, Yash.
I think one thing that Kabir has done better than I have, and this might lend more to CBS also, is just the ability for him to make a network outside of the school as well. Just because he's in New York, he has things in the city that you can do even outside school. So whether it's, meeting a few friends for from undergrad outside of school, he can do that. He can, maintain those kind of relationships. Whereas in Philly, I'm mostly just around Wharton people. I don't even really like meet people from the rest of the UPenn, campus. And I definitely don't have many friends outside of the school itself. And so I think that's one thing that I've probably not done as well as Kabir has. And I guess to try to do that more, I just try to go to New York as much as possible, try to rekindle some of those relationships that I've been missing out over the last few years.
Yeah, like Kabir said, no gated community, all of New York is your playground.
Yeah.
Okay, quick, honest reflections. What is overrated and underrated about the MBA program, Kabir?
I think what's overrated is like the job prospects numbers. I think they say that about 99.3% or some number like that of people get jobs within 3 months of graduating. I think that number is slightly inflated, and I think that's part of the reason why people say if you're just looking for a job outcome, you should double think if you want to do an MBA. It's people like that number doesn't really accurately report the number of people who don't have jobs because they don't end up filling those surveys.
All right. I mean, you're going
And
back to CBS. Remember that, Kabir, huh? All right. Uh,
Yeah.
and what's I think
Yash?
what's underrated is I think the access that you get. I think even though people say that you're just one subway ride away from anyone in New York City, it's just that everyone is so welcoming, open to help. I think CBS is probably one of the more collaborative schools, and I think I learned this because me and Yash talk so often. It seems like people at Wharton end up gatekeeping more information than people at CBS do.
Okay. Yash?
Okay, yeah. I think one overrated thing is that the academics that you learn in school don't don't only justify the investment that you're trying to make. A lot of these things can be learned, using AI um, or just on the internet. And I think that's one thing that you should keep in mind. Um, and then yeah, I think in terms of what's underrated, I think yeah, the network is definitely something that you can't just get doing anything else. If the kind of weightage that schools like Wharton and Columbia give you access to some of the brightest minds, it actually makes people consider your opinion, just compared to like if you do an undergrad, no one really when you're working, no one might give you the kind of respect that you get from doing an MBA at one of these top schools.
Okay, so network, one of the most important reasons people go to business school for and should continue going to business school for. All right, I'm going to do a quick rapid fire. One word to describe your school. Kabir.
Probably access.
Okay. Yash.
The best.
All right. One myth you want to break, Yash?
One myth I want to break, that you will get a job after graduation is the,
Okay.
yeah.
Kabir.
And CBS is only for finance people. I think it's much more than that.
Absolutely. One piece of advice for prospective applicants.
Come in with intentionality. You can make uh you can make what you want of the experience in the MBA.
Kabir.
Yeah. I think focus on what's true for you and not what your laundry list of achievements are when you're applying.
Oh, I love that one. Thank you so much. Perfect. All right. So this has been incredibly insightful, not just because of the schools that you represent, but because of the contrast in your experiences as well. For our listeners, the takeaway is simple. The MBA is not just about getting into a school, but choosing the right environment for who you want to become, and which is something that Yash and Kabir have kind of reiterated throughout this conversation. Thank you both for being candid and for keeping it real, and good luck with the rest of your business school journey.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. Right. All right, so that brings us to the end of this conversation. And thank you so much, Yash and Kabir, for doing this with us. This will go on various, social media platforms that the Red Pen has. It will, of course, go in its entirety, but also in parts. Sometimes we may pick parts to kind of highlight certain things. And I've learned a lot today. Thank you.
For
Thank you
sure.
so much.
All right.
Thank you.
Sorry for
Bye.
rescheduling twice. Bye.
Yeah.
No problem at all. Enjoy the rest of your evening, day, whichever part of the world you're in.
Yeah. Safe travels to the US when you're going.
Yes, I should be back there sometime later. I was there. I just came back from the US. I was there for the
Oh,
IGA conference at Duke Fuqua and UNC Keenan Flagler. And that kind of speaks to what you've said earlier. Of course, this is not part of the conversation, but how good some of these schools are. I mean, these schools are amazing at the cutting edge of tech, and they're doing I think they have the flexibility to experiment a lot more than the bigger schools, and they're doing that. And I'm amazed at the kind of resources they have for the class size that they have. So it was amazing. I've just come back from there, but yes, I'm slated to go back later in the year, and hopefully I don't know about Philly, but I should be in New York, so I should try and catch up with you, Kabir.
Yeah, for sure. If timing aligns, yeah, then for sure.
Of course, of course. I know you guys are very busy, but at some point, or otherwise, you guys are planning to be back in India, so we will definitely catch up when you're back in India. And as I said, I will align you with some of the people I know in
Yeah.
in investment
yeah. Thank
and
you so
equity
much.
markets. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.